Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Commentary as Magic's stream on tonight, January 28th, 2018. I am, as always, Grandpaws.
I am Emperor Bugle.
Big Cheese.
And Arcat.
And we're here for a continuation of something we started last year, and something that is definitely a lot of fun, and that is Patron deck reviews. So, for those of you who may be unaware, Commentary as Magic does have a Patreon, and one of the awesome rewards that patrons can earn is the ability to submit deck lists for review and suggestions of changes, and to be featured on a live stream. And it turns out we have actually quite a few to review today. I believe it's 4, is that correct?
Roughly 1,000.
I think we may want to pare it down.
If you round up to the nearest 1,000.
It's basically like 1,000, right?
It's basically like 1,000. But it should be a lot of fun, and it's a good chance to highlight what some of the other players in the community are focusing on in interesting deck directions that we might not otherwise see. Now, as a reminder, when we make these suggestions, there's a few things that we're keeping in mind. We do ask all of our patrons to list a little bit of information about their decks, specifically if they want to provide a name for it. That's always fun, because clearly a name is the most important thing in a deck.
Yes.
We also want to know how competitive they would like their deck to be, ranging anywhere from the top tier competitive down to meme deck, which I don't believe we've had anyone submit yet.
Poppy?
Not yet. I expect that to happen in the near future, but it has not happened yet.
And we also ask them about any key cards or interactions that they have in their deck, because while some choices may not necessarily be optimal, if someone has built a deck around a particular card or a particular card interaction, we definitely want to leave that intact if at all possible.
Right.
And of course, as everything else goes, when we're talking about cards, when we're talking about our suggestions, that's exactly what they are. These are suggestions. They are opinions. They're not to be taken as gospel. We're not always right. There are many ways to bake a cake. But with all that being...
Pinky song?
Yes, exactly. Or Lazy Town, one of the two.
That's what I was thinking of.
I was waiting for somebody to do that.
It wasn't going to take long. Would you say we are number 1? It's another Lazy Town reference.
Something pirates.
I got nothing.
Something.
All right.
Oh no! I actually know that one.
What, the pirate one? You better. That's like one of the most well-known pirate songs ever. But we're getting off topic.
I thought the most well-known pirate song was "It's Time to Be Awesome." Okay.
It's Saskatchewan pirate.
Before we devolve into more references and stuff, let's go ahead and get started with our first list. Ara, go ahead and take it away.
All right. So what we have here is a pink-orange deck. The description that came with this is it's the player's first deck they ever made, and it didn't do so well against several other people. It was essentially built around the shiny, powerful cards, the best ultra rares, super rares, and rares the player had, and then kind of built up around that. The general strategy here is big friends to deal with big problems that have large bonuses. Troublemakers just to provide a roadblock, although there is an epic that can be farmed for a bonus. And it has a flip average of 4.00, which the player thought would be a good indicator of its success. Now, the player here does not have many 3-ofs, so a limited card pool to work with. Now, a couple of things before we dig in. First off, I don't know the creator's meta. Celestia knows my local meta is all screwed up beyond belief, and theirs might be similarly skewed towards a certain style of play. I can assume a general meta, but we also don't have great data on what that looks like just yet. Plugs for the Coco tournament, maybe? No, definitely not.
Shameless plugs.
Shameless. No, that one was totally shameful. Second, from the creators' comments, they don't have a large card pool, so while I can offer concrete suggestions on what I'd add and remove, it may not be possible for them to do so, which means I'm going to be focusing a lot more on the why rather than the what.
Now, before you delve into this, which Patron's deck is this?
This is JD, as they are known to us.
Well, thank you for your patronage, JD. We appreciate it.
Yes.
So, with that, some observations. First, fundamentally, this is an aggro deck. It confronts for points. It can farm that one epic, and it does have C Poppy, and needs more Poppy, but those
Has two
aren't.
poppies.
Those are not how it intends to win. Despite having economy of movement in terms of large friends, it does not have cheap movement, nor does it have cost reduction. Pirate ship would be a good thing to consider here because you're not in blue, and pirate ship is about the only non-blue way to reduce movement costs. If, however, you also find yourself running out of action tokens, but generally have a lot of cards in hand, then Apple Bloom Remarkable is a way to turn some of those excess cards into more action tokens, or at least cheaper friends. Second, this has 0 resource removal. Resource removal is, everybody,
Mandatory.
Mandatory.
that's right. It's your precious. Your
Mandatory.
needs as it. So this is the one thing that I'm going to say objectively. A 3 of Big Mac Big Eater. If you do nothing else and end up with a 48 card deck because of it, just that's fine. Resource dismissal. Adds is it.
Assuming you have them. We do know you have a limited card pool.
Yeah, but I believe Big Mac is an uncommon, so...
In theory...
Yeah, if you can find them, we highly, highly recommend it.
Yes. Resource dismissal. Needs it. Okay. The deck, in and of itself, doesn't have a lot of removal. Now, it does have some tools, but if there's an annoying friend like, say, I don't know, Twist, on the opponent's side of the board, the deck only has a couple of options for dealing with it. None of them are particularly great. So, Crash on Delivery only works on stuff here at its problem. It's also fairly expensive. There's also Fernando, but that's also pretty restricted. It only works on things in a face-off, and you need a face-off in the first place to use it. Grandpa's is going to hit me for this, but this is a pink deck. Where are the belly flops and the berry punch orange swirls?
I'd probably be far more upset with you if I wasn't also running pink decks with those cards.
Okay, granted, the drinking duo don't fit with the deck's overall strategy too well, but there will be some token friends to throw around, the seashells or the rock tokens. So maybe a couple of belly flops, though, you do need to retire stuff in order to use belly flops, which, given how much you're spending on the friends, is probably not going to be a good trade most of the time, but there are tokens.
Yeah, and he's got Minuet Schadenfreude in here as well, at least as a one-of, so even if he only runs Berry Punch and Orange Swirl, he's got a retire outlet.
Maybe. We'll get to that.
Okay.
So there's a lot of one-ofs in here. Now, in the past, we've had a stream on consistency. You can go look at the recording of that for a more in-depth discussion, but the Too Long Didn't Read is essentially it's better to have a strategy and deck that will consistently perform well as opposed to a deck that either just flies or just crashes and burns, depending on what you drew. You should make I should phrase this slightly differently. Don't fall into the Johnny trap of thinking, when I get my one card, that one copy of that super good card that I've got. It's always an if you get that one copy of that super good card, unless you're also running stuff to find said one copy of super good card, but that just raises the chances. If your deck relies on 1/3 of to work, and you don't have a lot of good ways to get that 1/3 of, it's kind of questionable. Now, that all said, run the best cards that you can, but don't just throw a rare in just because it's a rare. It still needs to be better than the other things that you could run in its place, and this deck has several things that violate that rule. First off, Pearl of Transformation. So this deck only has one card with transform cost, which is Skystar, and there are no other Skystars, so you can't, other than the main, obviously, but you can't use transform with it. So I look at Pearl and go, I don't see what the point of this is. There's not support for using this. Lyra can be replaced with basically any other pink card. There are many, many things that fit that slot, and Lyra is basically the worst of them that I can think of. Another one of that Skystar, if absolutely nothing else. The ultra rare cheese sandwich. I don't particularly like this because there are better ways to replace problems. I realize that this is a super rare, but another copy of bait and switch instead of cheese sandwich would be reasonable. The other cheese sandwich, I forget his subtitle. Sure, it gets big when you have a lot of earth ponies and makes tokens, but I don't think that gets big enough fast enough, nor do I think that the tokens from him are going to be particularly relevant. Minuet, and the reason for this one is essentially you don't want to retire your stuff. It's all expensive, and without, say, drinking duo, you can't steal stuff. So I again look at this and go, I'm not real sure what the goal here is here. Tempest Airship, which it's not a bad card, but I don't think this deck is going heavy enough on the troublemakers to justify this. There's a Coming Through, which I'm wondering if there's not a chaos heavy meta that this thing's running in, perhaps, but I can't think of a whole lot of reasons for this otherwise. And finally, Big Mac Little Brother, over in which place I just run more Granny Smiths. You get the plus flip anyway, and you get a cool ability out of it instead of having to play this guy, then cutie mark him. And Wreck is not exactly a problem here, given that Skystar is the main. Speaking of Wreck, there are 5 fixer events, 2 fixer resources, trading traditions, and 1 entry friend. I would much rather get rid of the events and the Winona for Applejack Cutie Mark Consultant and Apple Bloom Budding Apple. So those are both entry friends that are 3 and 4 or power respectively. And their bodies so they can help you confront on their own. And to slightly make up for the loss of some of the fixing, I think I'd throw in another motivational speech, because Apple Bloom is obviously not going to work very well if Skystar is only pink. Now, Skystar and the main. Now, personally, I love making decorative waifu boxes out of shells as much as the next person, but it might be worth considering Muffin Mare and making the deck orange-pink. She works well enough with large friends and gives the deck another way to move power around to help confront in face-offs. We've referred to this sort of thing as an Elves-style deck in the past, but that generally works best with blue. It can be made to work with pink, but I think it works better with blue. I'm not real fond of trading traditions with Skystar. It's too hard to confront. Running either Concerning Cutie Mark or Searching High and Low so you can play Skystar, or attempt to DFO as fast as possible to get to your big problem seems like a better plan.
I'm sorry, what game were you hoping to play?
Nothing about Skystar Chicken? No.
Never.
Skystar Tic Tac Toe.
Never don't
Yes.
play Skystar Chicken.
Never don't play Skystar. Yes, never don't play Skystar Chicken.
Find the Shell, I believe it was.
Find the Shell. Yes, that game. Not Skystar Chicken. We never play Skystar Chicken. We always play Skystar Chicken. Now, as I mentioned before, the deck's general strategy is to run Big Friends. Big Friends cost a lot and represent significant investment into getting them on the field, which makes them even bigger targets for whatever card the opponent is currently smirking about. So there needs to be a way to protect those things. There's some protection for token friends from Holder's Boulder, but that won't save the rest of your stuff, and it also doesn't protect those token friends from dismissal. Appaloosa, on the other hand, can keep your big friends safe from the most prevalent forms of interaction, frightening and dismissal. An alternative could be splashing into yellow for Brian and a set of resource dismissal tools. Yes, I realize Appaloosas are rares from a set that is exceedingly difficult to get a hold of. However, those are probably going to serve you better than most of the other things I can think of.
You can still buy EO on Enterplay Store.
This is true.
I think they still have their sale going on right now, actually.
That one's totally not a shameless plug.
Nope.
Now, finally, I'd like to comment on the flip average. Not that there isn't a correlation, but I contend that you can't set having a high flip average as a primary design goal in an aggro deck. It's nice to have, but there are supposed to be a bunch of friends, at the problems contributing their power. Furthermore, the average doesn't tell the full story. The power histogram says that the deck has lots of cards with wildly varying powers. So you don't have a great guarantee about what you're going to flip, because you might flip a 1. You might also flip a 7.
Or anything in between.
Or anything in between. Now, I went through the deck and have a edited version based on the suggestions that I've given.
Should we take a look at that?
Yeah. You gave a lot of suggestions, so this is probably just one possible version of it.
Just one possible version, many different flavors of cakes, many different ways to bake a cake. It's a piece of cake to bake a cake.
Must resist singing.
Yes. Okay.
You are a pirate.
This incorporates most of the major suggestions. There are a couple of things that I think I should call out. Rescue Party was a very large friend that can't be scared, and it gets plus flip, but I also prefer the broad protection of Appaloosa over that. And if you look at the power histogram on the edited version, you are far more likely to flip a 3 or up. So it'll save you from flipping the random 1 and losing the face off to that. Although there are still some 1s.
It does seem like it would provide some extra consistency there.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So, next up, I think we've got Bugle has a deck here.
Well, it's not my deck. It's Railershide's deck.
Thank you for your patronage, Railershy.
Yes. So Railer's note here said he ran this at his local group's Secret Santa tourney, and with the blue, it has a touch of aggro and Night Glider overpowering for a point boost, while the majority of the rest is to keep a fear near lock going. With white, there's some bonus point gains, as well as a dash of control as well. You see what he did there? A dash of control. There's
There's Rainbow
some
Dash.
pirate dashes.
I'm not going to hold my mic open while I groan.
Anyway,
Okay, maybe I will.
It's got some burritos.
So, first things first. Arcat pointed this out in his, but we need to point it out again. This deck also violates our number 1 rule, which is resource dismissal is
Mandatory.
mandatory.
Wait. I thought the number 1 rule was always play Skystar Chicken.
No, we just discussed that.
Oh, okay.
As Echo Sangan says in chat, never don't not Skystar Chicken. Anyway, so now I do realize blue-white is not well known for its resource dismissal. It's got effectively 3 options. It's got trashed, it's got a petite sneeze, and it's got fixing into a 3rd color for resource dismissal. None of those are particularly appealing, especially in the current meta, but you need something. Having nothing is just asking to get rolled over by Styx, by Desert Roads,
Appaloosas.
Well, yeah, even Appaloosa. Yeah, you've got so much Frighten here. So I highly, highly recommend adding some trash. A full 3.
Not a petite sneeze.
Not a petite sneeze.
That's not even an option. I prefer to just randomly splash into yellow.
Yeah. That is what the pink-white decks are doing. Splashing into yellow or purple. So, okay, that's the first thing. You need the resource removal. Another thing that immediately jumps out at me is that we're in a Skystar meta. And Skystar has this annoying habit of
playing Skystar Chicken.
Having a 100% chance of DFOing turn 2 against this deck if they use Concerning Cutie Mark or Searching High and Low as their starting problem. 100% chance. You cannot stop them. That's not good odds.
Did somebody say Skystar Chicken?
That is pretty disruptive, especially if you're going second. It means you lose your white, and this deck does not have a lot of white entry. Aside from Trading Traditions, which gives you access to Rarity if you don't have a flipped Scootaloo, and a few other cards if you do. But aside from that, all this deck has is 3 Aloes and 2 Dance Fevers. And all Aloe gets you into is the Rarity, not the Pirate Rarity, the Decorator Rarity. That's not the state you want to be in. You actually might lose right there on the spot. It suddenly becomes very difficult to flip your main, and you just don't have the white. But even worse than this is this deck has very few ways of dealing with troublemakers right now. It has 4 ways, or 7 if you want to count Rainbow Dash and Mullet. They can help. Sorry, lost my train of thought there. Right. The 4 TM busters. You've got your 2 Changeling Can changes, and you've got your 2 Tyrix Reign of Terrors. And aside from that, you have no ways of bypassing troublemakers. And the other very popular main right now is Tempest Shadow, who drops a troublemaker in your way and tends to run other troublemakers, so it's not too hard to just drop another troublemaker. And if you thought losing your Trading Traditions was bad, never being able to flip your main in this deck is way worse. Now, you do have a few ways to enter blue, even without a flip Scootaloo, which is good, but it's still very, very difficult to proceed from there. So I recommend, at a minimum, running some cracking the cases, but there are some other options as well. But cracking the case is very nice here because not only is it the best TM Buster ever printed, but it's easier to play than your other TM Busters, at least early on, if you're seeing a Troublemaker early. The next thing that jumps out at me is Cadence. Cadence is a very interesting card, and there are definitely some synergies that you can use with her, and you're not using any of them in this deck. By herself, Cadence is not a very good card. She needs to move twice to get any benefit, and while Scoots does make that easier, it still takes a while to get anything back. And by that point, you're not really... it's just not very efficient. Now, the deck does have some nice cards for you to get back, admittedly, but the setup is just not worth the payoff. Now, for some positive things, you have a lot of ways to frighten, and that's pretty good. And because of all of those ways to frighten, your 2 torches, which are normally not considered an aggro card, are just fine here. You're going to be scaring a lot of things, and that's where Torch really shines. So if he is performing well, which I expect he is, I do suggest keeping him. But if not, it might be worth replacing him. It may also be worth considering some non-frighten removal, however, because right now, all you have are the 2 Petrifieds, which are fine, but again, people are running resource removal, so it is easy to stop Petrified from petrifying things. My suggestions here would be either it's going to work or Opal Royal Edict. Both of these work very well for aggro decks and probably actually work better than Petrified. Which one I would suggest depends largely on your meta, and of course you could always run a mix of both. Now, you mentioned before that you've got a lot of point generation. You've got 6 right here, 3 Night Gliders and 3 Pirate Rarities, and I think including both is actually just fine. Some people might think that's too much, but in a blue-white deck, I think that's great. It might not be correct to run 3 copies of each. It might be better to do 3 and 2, but I do like the fact that you have the ability to score extra points from face-offs or just from confronting, depending on the situation. Another card that really jumped out at me is the single copy of Follow My Lead, which I think is actually pretty good in a Scootaloo deck. Since you're going to be moving a lot of things around because of Scoot's ability, and this is pretty cheap power. 1 cost, 2 power is relatively good. I wouldn't want to run more than the 1 copy, so I think spot on right there. Overall, the deck does show some promise. Blue-white is a very fun archetype, but the lack of resource removal, a severe weakness to Troublemakers, and the low entry, if the opponent DFOs your starting problem away, keep this from being as good as it could be. I would suggest exploring avenues to minimize those weaknesses before considering what other areas to improve. This may mean cutting some of the other cards that are working for you, and or reworking your game plan for what to do after you flip your main. But with a little work, this deck might show some promise. Now, unlike Kara, I don't have a suggested deck for you, but I think you have the tools to make this better. So good luck with that, Railer. And with that, we are moving on to Grandpa's deck. Well, Sonnet Scrolls deck, which Grandpa's will talk about.
You did the same thing.
Yes, I did.
Aha.
My Patoy has been hoisted.
All right.
Is that how you pronounce that?
Petard.
Petard?
Yes. Okay, so this is an interesting deck that Sonnet Scroll, thank you for your patronage, by the way, Sonnet Scroll, calls Twilight Staffle. And she has built this to be a semi-competitive deck.
Staffel.
And her comments on this were, the faithful student plus staff interaction is pretty obvious, but by splashing yellow to use Gone Batty, it seemed like a fun way to use a card that hasn't seen much, if any, play. She wanted this to be more consistent rather than toolboxy, but she was open to suggestions on how to make it more efficient at scoring points and keeping problems clear. So this is a somewhat interesting twist on the traditional Twilight Faithful Student antisocial farming that we've seen before. Which generally works by running minimal friends and relying more on powerful events and a high flip average, so that Twilight becomes capable of beating up just about any epic troublemaker with relative ease. Any troublemaker, really. What is kind of unusual here is the decision to split Twilight's focus between control and farming, and it's not like she's not more than capable of doing both, especially with a flip average that is just shy of 5. And many, many disruptive events. The question that we have to ask is, do you gain more value by having Twilight playing double duty than you would if she went only the farming route? So let's start, as we do with the other decks, by going down the checklist and make sure that the deck meets basic building requirements first. Resource removal. There are 3 Luna's Futures in this deck, so yes, you have resource removal. Good job.
Fanfare plays.
Woo!
I think it might also be worth pointing out, if it wasn't obvious, that this is a Harmony deck.
Yes, this is a Harmony deck.
Oh.
The previous 2 decks, I believe, have been core.
Yes.
Color entry. This is not bad. It's okay. There are 5 pieces of color entry in the deck right now, unless you're counting Trading Traditions, which makes it 6. And there's actually only 6 cards in the deck that are outside of purple. However, since none of these off-color cards can be played at immediate speed, it's likely a better decision to run Singing Barrel over Motivational Speech, just because you're never going to need that color requirement outside of your own turn. And Singing Barrel is much safer to be playing.
You can
Also,
recover it back to your hand. You
Works
don't
for
need to
both
worry.
colors.
Yes, also does work for both colors. Flipping the main. Okay, so in Sequestria and beyond, we don't really have to worry about this so much because all the mains can flip for 2 whenever we want. But that hasn't always been the case. And in this case, flipping the main is a little bit sketchy here. While Stick is clearly a great method of doing this, if you can't find one early and you need to flip Twilight through a Troublemaker face-off, the only event that you're capable of playing off of Twilight's 1 purple requirement is Friends Forever, which has no requirement. So a possible solution here would be to swap out the makeovers and run Join the Herd instead, because not only would that boost Twilight by 2 power, which is helpful in getting her closer to winning the face-off, but it would also give her the necessary 3 requirement to play Star Swirl Research to almost guarantee a face-off win. And finally, just going down the basic checklist, we look at the problem deck. This is a control deck somewhat, and it does have blackmail, so yep, seems good. The rest of the selections make total sense as well. Halfway Across Equestria, Spell Showdown, all of them. All good choices. So with basic deck building requirements out of the way, we can now look at the rest of the card selections. The control event suite looks pretty solid, and you have ways to deal with most threats that the opponent is going to be capable of presenting. Gone Batty, as mentioned in the deck description, is clearly in here for fun. It hasn't really seen play ever before. I was kind of impressed to sit there and realize exactly how much AT you're going to be capable of generating through this in conjunction with Stick, though, with Staff. Without Gone Batty, Twilight makes Staff neutral. You spend 1 AT to activate it, you win the face-off. Twilight has Studious, you gain 1 AT, so it doesn't cost you anything. Gone Batty all of a sudden says, now you're actually gaining 2 AT off of using Staff. It's costing you 1 and you're gaining 3. That is basically the equivalent of playing and using a Heart's Desire every turn in that it's an almost automatic 2-action token gain. And that's kind of good. Photo finish also, of course, makes sense as a method of point acceleration if you're choosing not to fight your own troublemakers. And while Xerox is a little bit of an unorthodox choice, her flexibility in allowing you to copy any friend in play means that you get to reap the benefits of powerful friends your opponent plays without having to dedicate deck slots to those yourself. And because of the 2 identity thefts, it may be worth considering swapping a couple of the controlling events to Interdimensional Portal, just so you can reset Chrissy's ability at immediate speed if your opponent has disruptive friends that function on entering play. However, if you don't feel a need to do that at immediate speed, Luna's Future can also do that for you. While Changeling Infiltrator can provide some discard reshuffling, excuse me just a moment. Anyway, while it can provide some discard reshuffling once most of the deck's control events are used, there is a very real possibility that Twilight may find herself without good methods of stopping the opponent from breaking through the Troublemaker wall. And part of this is because Twilight does not have a lot of control tools here that will function when she's not involved in the face-off. Friends Forever won't work. Storyful Research will work, but you'll lose it. It'll go to the bottom of your deck because Twilight's not involved, so you don't get to put it back into your hand at the end of the face-off. For this reason, I would consider trying to include 2 copies, at least 2 copies, of Spooky Ruins in here. And the reason for doing so is it's in the same color as Gone Batty. It can beat the opponent into using some of their resource removal on something other than staff. And it's probably worth dropping a single copy of Gone Batty and bringing one of the playsets of events down to 2 in order to fit this in. The reason for doing so is Gone Batty is a unique resource, so you can't have more than 1 in play. And additionally, you get a bit of draw disruption for the opponent with the event as well. Overall, the deck does seem to be well positioned to disrupt opposing friends and to grind out a game in an agonizingly slow manner. And for a list that is built around a card that has basically never seen play, this is pretty solid. And while it likely wouldn't be claiming any first place finishes in major tournaments, as a semi-competitive deck, which is what you built it as, I really do like what you've got going on here. And I do have an updated list. Which I will shift to here in just a moment. Okay, we've got that linked in the sidebar. Chase can go ahead and, there we go. So just some minor changes, keeping the general structure of the deck the same. But overall, seems fun. I like gaining 2 AT and frightening an opposing friend and probably putting an event into my hand.
Yeah, I've got to admit, that is pretty cute.
Yeah, it's that's fun.
Regrettably, it is Harmony, though.
What?
No fun.
No fun.
No fun.
With that, I think we've got one more deck to review this evening, and that is going to be Cheese, who I believe is talking about Cursed Chords deck. So thank you, Cursed, for your patronage.
So here we've got Make Starlight Evil again. And as you can tell from the name, it's based around... What's her name? Starlight is her name. Starlight Glimmer, Magical Instructor. Who reads, because you probably can't read it from here, when you play an event, you may exhaust this card and a number of your other unicorn friends equal to that event's cost to copy its effects. So, you play an event, and instead of just having it fire once, it fires multiple times. Which can have some interesting effects, particularly with recursion. So you've got cleaning up here. And normally cleaning up is just one time and it's gone. Or if you have two of them, you can just cycle them back and forth, but that's not very useful. But with this, if you've got her set up in enough unicorns, you can actually get other cards back. And so this gets you the equivalent of an F-stop with quite a bit more setup. But once it is set up, it's quite useful. So let's take a look at the basics like we've done with the other decks. Resource removal. Yeah, it's got 3 special beam cannons. Seems good. Let's take a look at the problem deck. It's a lot of 10s there. And looks... One sec. A lot of strong control problems. So, that's good.
Oh,
Sorry, we're having some technical difficulties here.
Yeah, I just dropped from our chat, but you can still hear me.
Yep.
Because I'm hosting. So,
Oh, you and your sneaky.
yeah, so if I disconnect, it's okay. They'll still hear me. Yeah, so we got good problems. Now, let's move on to entry. So, one of the... so we have a... When you submit a deck, you can say some comments or concerns or what you want to focus on. And one of the things was some concern over the entry. And that's what... When we looked at this, that's what we saw too. Was... if your opponent... So you've got Changeling Pretender, which is 2 colors when she's flipped. And you've got 3 smoozes and 3 speeches, which sounds pretty good. But it is a bit light. And one of the reasons for that is that since this is a tricolor deck, generally you're going to want to prefer... And you've only got 2 purple cards. So generally you're going to want to prefer Singing Barrel over Motivational Speech, because it allows you to change which color it is. Or in a single turn, use it for multiple colors. Another issue is actually Changeling Pretender herself. If your opponent doesn't flip, for instance, they're running Skystar or Tempest, and they just choose not to flip, you can't play anything. I mean, you can play the Troublemakers, and you could play your Motivational Speech, but that doesn't actually allow you to play anything else. So yes, you can play Smooth. So now you're down to 3 cards that you have to get, and not just one of them, because having one still only allows you to play cards of that color. You basically have to find... Well, so you can switch it between turns, but it severely limits what you can play. So we're looking around trying to figure out how to improve the entry, and we actually think the best way is to switch mains. If you switch to Skystar, you've now got guaranteed flip, so now you're guaranteed at 3 power, and all of your cards, or most of your cards, need 3 rec. And so if you got a flipped Skystar and Barrel or Motivational Speech, you're good on entry. And with that, you would also change to get some of the dual color thing back. You would also switch over to Trading Traditions. That's what that problem's called. And when you do that, you can also grab Soprano to add some extra control and increase the value of Harsh Judge, and Rainbow Shine to reduce the cost of all the events you've got. So that we've addressed the entry, let's take a look at the control elements of the deck. So you've got plenty of removal. You got Berry Punch, Orange Swirl, Belly Flop combo. It's gonna work, Cornered, and Party of One. So that's a lot of removal, which is good for your Bodyguard, which will create the unicorn tokens you need to power up Starlight. However, for Recursion, you've only got the 2 cleaning ups, and this is actually kind of critical to the deck because you're control, so you're not going to be ending the game quickly, and 3 belly flops isn't going to cut it for the whole game. You're going to need more than that. So I would suggest dropping one of the cleaning ups and adding 3 spectacles. This is cheaper than cleaning up, and provides you more recursion while you're setting up the Starlight engine to get back the events you need. So we've added quite a few cards here. What gets removed? So first thing to go was the Remix Masters. At 4 cost, she's quite an investment with a pretty low return. Your friends in this deck don't particularly care if they're at a problem or if they're at home. And with the amount of removal running around these days, the chances that she's going to stay around are pretty slim. We also drop 1 It's Going to Work, 1 Cornered, and 1 Party of 1, since you have the recursion, and these are going to be longer term cards. And it's okay if you have to wait a little bit for them. And also drop 2 Trixies, as you can both use It's Going to Work to bring back Troublemakers, and something had to go. And so with those changes, it ends up looking like this. Now, this is just one way to do it. There are some other ways to fix entry. You can also actually look at this from Tempest, but that actually changes a lot. So I felt that wasn't keeping it close enough. But yeah.
Starlight is a fun card.
I haven't actually played with her yet, but it does look interesting. I do like losing F-stop hurts so much. It just hurts me. And ways to get
The world
get
is
his...
better off.
It is. It is. But
saying this as a premier F-stop user, the world is better off without him.
But seeing the ways to get back the control elements, the infinite control, or I don't like infinite because infinite generally implies a single turn, so it's like unlimited. But
I think Cursed's preferred language for that is eternity control.
eternity, it
Yep.
could just go.
Yeah, he made
and
a
go.
article about that today.
Oh, okay, cool.
But I believe that will cover the 4 deck submissions for this month. As a reminder,
But we got some announcements.
We do have announcements. Take it away, Ara.
Okay. The final result for Coco Round 2 just came in, so we will have the Round 3 pairings going out soon, as well as, since we are staggering these a little bit, the signups for Coco number 2. What, you thought we were going to stop at just 1? No.
Coco all day, every day.
Skystar Chicken all day, every day. Incidentally, the poll for that one closes very soon, and Skystar Chicken, 2 votes for always, 1 vote for never. Always Skystar Chicken.
This is wrong.
Never don't Skystar Chicken.
This is wrong.
So you're saying that I'm gonna have to come up with a new deck to play?
No. If you are happy with your current deck, you can absolutely just run it again.
That's one of the big advantages to Coco, is because it is a constructed format tournament that is built on determining the core meta rather than other tournaments like Silver Spanner that are built on creative deck building. If you find something and you think it's good, by all means, keep throwing it against the wall.
Run what works.
It's a great way to get practice in for major events like BabsCon, or Everfree, or High Roller PonyCon,
I thought we were done with the shameless plugs.
or Gen Con,
Or BronyCon.
or BronyCon,
Or
Ponyville
Ciderfest.
Ciderfest. Yep,
High roller.
I said High Roller.
Oh, okay. Next
Yeah.
year's Gen Con.
Oh, really? I mean, okay, sure, that's fair. We have one other thing, though. Coming soon to a stream near you, it's the one objectively best pony, Queen Chrysalis, our Queen is Best Queen, who is the star of our upcoming Villain Challenge. No spoilers just yet, but tune in maybe next time.
Now,
And-
I believe we have a number of new players here. You want to briefly explain what Villain Challenge is?
Oh, maybe. Basically, it's where our queen can be the best queen. And okay, for serious. So Villain Challenge is a rather unique custom format where you and two of your friends team up on a villain. And the villain's got a larger deck, more resources, and doesn't always follow the same rules as the challengers.
You're saying Queen Chrysalis cheats?
I would be disappointed if she didn't. But
No.
Chrysalis is the newest villain, preceded by Nightmare Moon and Sombra, both of whom are very mean in their own right, but Chrysalis has her own little twist on things. What is it? I don't know.
Could someone? It's a twist. When could someone see more information about this Queen Chrysalis Villain Challenge?
I don't know. Maybe next time. Maybe we'll have a
Maybe.
little something next time.
Ooh.
Anyway, I think that about wraps up our discussion on this topic for today. We'd like to give a big shout out to our patrons on Patreon. Thank you so much for your regular support. If you aren't currently a patron and you enjoy what we do, please consider donating. Doing so will give you awesome rewards like the ability to vote on polls to determine what future videos we produce, a chance, just like we just did, to share your own deck creations to be reviewed live, and even the ability to challenge members of Sim or other patrons to feature duels using some weird and wacky rules. If you have comments or questions you'd like to send our way, or you're just interested in hearing about what we're working on in the future, there are many ways to stay in contact. We have our Patreon, as previously mentioned, but we also have a Facebook page, facebook.com/commentariesmagic. We're on Twitter as sim_ccg. You can email us at commentariesmagicteam@gmail.com, and patrons at the $5 a month level and above get access to our Slack channel where you can chat with us live any day, every day, anytime. Unless we're sick, sometimes. That's a thing that happens occasionally. But seriously, our sweep schedules are just whack.
I am apparently bad at linking the information,
23-hour nap.
and
There
I could
you
use
go.
a 23-hour nap.
If you're looking to watch any of our previous videos, including tournament recordings, you can find them on our YouTube channel linked in the sidebar and in chat. Make sure to subscribe so that we can have a channel URL that actually makes sense, please. I would so like to have a nice channel URL instead of this weird Google link.
Nonsense. You want nonsense.
Now, nonsense is what you were asking for when you wanted me to give Derpy's canonical name. I'm not giving you the JPEG representation of a picture of a muffin. That I can't pronounce
Muffin?
that. Uh-huh.
I hope you don't, Fairy. This is pretty miserable.
Well, with all that said, thank you to each and every one of our viewers, both here now and watching this recording later.
We are, as always, Commentary is Magic. I am, as always, Grandpa's.
We forgot to say what's next.
We'll say at the end.
No,
Just
okay.
say your names. Say
I'm
your
fine.
name.
I'm Emperor Bugle.
Big cheese.
And our cat.
And next week, we will be highlighting the meta retrospective for Defenders of Equestria.
Sounds
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, there's some interesting stuff to talk about there.
Yes, indeed. Have a good night, every pony. Get your flu shots.
Get your
Night.
flu shots. Hail, hydrate.